Hello, welcome to another video from me, and it is a wrap up of everything I read in the month of November, which is also the very first month that I've been on BookTube. Yay! And I was worried this month actually because I started this channel and then immediately felt like I had absolutely no fucking time to do any reading. So I'm pleasantly surprised when I came to tot up the books for this month that I have actually read 12 books, which is about average for what I read in a month. Since a couple of years ago when I stopped being snobby about audiobooks. So yeah, now I am able to read a lot more around, normally between 12 and 15 books a month. So it's not been a great reading month, but considering I think about halfway through the month I'd read about 2 books. So we've done some catching up. So I'm going to do a quick little wrap up of everything I have read. It was non-fiction November this month, and I had grand plans. I put an Instagram post up being like, these are some of the titles I'm planning on getting to this month. I'll put the picture here for context because you will not be seeing any of these books in this wrap up because I have read not a one of them. I have started the James Baldwin and I am really enjoying it, but I don't want to rush my reading experience of that. I really enjoy his writing, and I'm kind of breaking up reading those essays. But the things I have read of non-fiction, I did actually read 5 non-fiction books this month. So just under half of my reading this month was non-fiction, which is more than normal. So I've tried my best. So I'm gonna sort of do a non-fiction sandwich to this wrap up. We're gonna start with a couple of non-fiction titles. We're gonna do the fiction, and then we're gonna end with some non-fiction. For no reason other than that is the order I remembered them in. So there we go. It was also this month featured Trans Awareness Week, so I'm starting by talking about a couple of books that I deliberately picked up because of Trans Awareness Week. I mean, there were books that I wanted to get to anyway, but I thought that is why I love a kind of awareness week or month or whatever, because it just encourages you to do a bit more of a directed, yeah, you know what, I am going to pick up that thing that I said I was going to pick up. And the first was this little slip of a thing. So this, I've spoken about these before on my channel. It's from 404 Inc. They have these Inklings, little tiny non-fiction books. And this is really a kind of a little mini memoir by a writer called Liam Konemann. And Liam is a trans man and a gay trans man, and that is something that he talks a lot about in here. And it's really interesting and sad in that a lot of what he's talking about when he's talking about the transphobia that he's encountered has actually come, if not from the queer community, at least by this sort of false dichotomy that people create between especially sort of lesbians and trans men, and act like those two are in opposition with each other when they're actually not. But yeah, Liam's a brilliant writer. I'm actually, I saw that he's got a debut novel out, also published by 404 Inc., which I think I'm definitely going to pick up because I really liked his writing style. It was a very easy, informal sort of writing style. And the reason this book is called The Appendix is because Liam started collating all of the small pieces of transphobia or trans erasure or aggression that he encountered in the media and on social media. Now, his rule was that he couldn't go looking for it. It had to be just authentically as he encountered it. And he kept a list of it, and he started calling that list The Appendix. But that's really the jumping off point for this book, because he then goes on to realise, and part of the joyful part of this book that Liam then explores is how actually by becoming hyper aware of all those things. It wasn't adding anything to his existence. It was actually damaging his mental health. But it's a great little book. I really recommend it if you are looking to broaden your horizons. 404 Inc. have tons of titles like these from a really diverse group of writers on a massively diverse range of issues. And I thought it was really good. So recommend. In fact, it's I need to post it through my friend's door later on or tomorrow. And on a similar vein, I listened on audio to Female Husbands: A Trans History by Jen Manion. And I loved the idea of this book. This is as it sounds, it's a history of trans men. Well, it's actually a bit more complex than that, but it is a history looking at all of the instances, or many of the instances, in the past where people who were assigned female at birth go on to marry women and become these sort of female husbands, as they were known at the time. And I thought it was really interesting, and I'm thrilled that it exists as a book. Unfortunately, I didn't massively get on with it and as a whole book. The way it was structured, Jen looks at kind of individuals in sequence, and just for me and my brain, I found that quite difficult. Like, a lot of those really interesting people that they were talking about have now kind of blended in my brain. So it's very much this wasn't structured right for me. But I did really appreciate what Jen was doing in terms of bringing these stories to the fore and talking about how actually there have been people who have been transing gender for a really long time. I think the first female husband that Jen talks about is from the 1740s. So the next time anyone talks about how transness is a new phenomenon, can educate themselves by reading this book. I really, like I said, I really liked what it was going for. I think what I would have preferred were more, was a structure that was more thematic. So maybe looking at female husbands at work, and then female husbands and divorce, or female husbands, or the wives and the wives and widows of female husbands. So all of those things feature. They all sort of featured interspersed throughout the individual stories, and I thought that ended up making the book feel a little bit repetitive. It's also a bit of a chunky boy. I think the audiobook was 13 hours, and I did end up listening to it on 1.2 speed because it felt long for me. But I do think if that is an area of interest for you, then definitely pick it up. But it just stylistically wasn't exactly what I wanted. Next up we had, is this my favourite book of the month? I think it's my favourite book of the month. This is Autumn by Ali Smith, which I read this month. I'm not going to go into it in detail because I have a whole vlog where I'm reading this, but Ali Smith is sort of one of my favourite writers, but newly one of my favourite writers. I came to her very late, and I'm very behind on her backlist. But I loved this. It's the first of the seasonal quartet that I read. It follows largely the relationship between a young girl and an older man, not in a creepy way, like a elderly older man, and this sort of lovely friendship they have, but they're slightly estranged. It jumps around in time, but it does everything that, if you're familiar with Ali Smith's work, everything that she does brilliantly, sort of quiet political commentary in the background, told through the prism of just really interesting, complex people who have real complex relationships with each other, and a fair dose of a bit of surrealist otherworldliness to it. I loved it. That's all I'm going to say about this one, because if you want more, you can go on the old reading vlog. I will link it down below. That is not the only Ali Smith I read this month, though. I also read Hotel World, which was great. I don't think I loved it as much as Autumn, but I did. I mean, so far, Ali Smith can do no wrong, in my opinion, and I did really, really love this. This is sort of more a collection of interconnected short stories, all based around this one hotel. The first perspective that we hear from is actually a girl who has died in the hotel, and we're sort of hearing from her, not quite her ghost, I guess, sort of her conscience, her whatever is left of us after we've died. And we find out that she died in the hotel because she fell. She kind of got into a dumbwaiter. This is not a spoiler. We find this out quite early on. You know where dumbwaiters are in hotels? She basically fell down one of those, which is a bit horrific. And then subsequently we get the stories of other characters that were sort of some are more obviously linked with that girl. We hear from her sister at one point, but others are just people who are in and around it. And again, it's just got that thing that Ali Smith does so well, where it's like she is discovering the world as she is writing it, and you can feel her natural curiosity for these characters that she's writing about, and she's just sort of following them around and being like, if this happens, how do you react? But I wanted to read you a little bit of it, because I think there was a section in here, it's a little bit long, but hopefully not too long, where she talks. I just think it captures the voice of the book really well. This is from the perspective of the sister of the girl who has died. I'm going to try that again. I'm going to do my best to try and read it fluently. There is no punctuation in this section though, so if I trip over my words, I'm sorry. All the people at the funeral saying her name wrong and looking embarrassed, neighbours if I meet them outside or if I'm at the shops and there's someone who knows mum or him, it's this funny sideways look. And how are you all coping? A dreadful loss, like we lost a purse or a dog, or a terrible way to lose someone's life, like she just put it down somewhere and when she looked up she didn't know what she'd done with it. A terrible way to lose someone close, like we lost her in a department store in the sportswear department, and if we went to the customer service desk we could put a call out for her over the intercom speakers. This is a message for Sarah Wilby. Your family is waiting at customer service. Could Sarah Wilby please come back from the dead? Like, I just love it. I love it. This was great. Ali Smith's great. The end. I mean, it's not the end. I got more stuff to talk to you about. The next book is another one that I listened to on audio. I listened to Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh. This was my first Ottessa Moshfegh book, actually. I suspected she was an author that I was going to really like based on other people who really like her work, who I think my taste is quite similar to, and I was right. I really, really liked this book, and I should have written down who narrated it. I'll insert it here, but the narrator on the audiobook that I listened to was great. This is a brilliant book if you are looking to lean away from the Christmas spirit. So it happens around Christmas time, but it is not a jolly festive read. It follows Eileen, and it's told from her perspective, and she is an interesting character. She's narrating sort of the story of her life, I guess, and she flits a bit all over the place. So we know that she has left her hometown, but we don't know why. And we know she left her hometown around Christmas, and we don't know why. And as the book goes on, you sort of just slowly unravel the circumstances around why she left. But it's really, really interesting. She works at a juvenile detention centre for boys, and there's just all sorts of really well drawn, well observed character studies, like everything I really, really love in a book. And Eileen is not always likable. She's very fatphobic, for one thing, so content warning for that, but I don't think not in a way that makes me think the author is, in very much this is this character's flaw, and she does kind of own it in a way. But yeah, it's a, I don't really know how to describe it. It's sort of like a really slowed down thriller, but yeah, it was I thought I understood what it was. And there was a point in the narrative where I was like, oh, this is where we're going. Yeah, really recommend, and definitely will not be the last Ottessa Moshfegh that I pick up. Yeah, really liked it. Next up, we have another sort of crimey book. This is Demon by Matt Wesolowski. This is the 6th and final installment in 6 stories, the series, written by Matt. Although I have officially put my request in for a 7th book. Matt is marrying my best friend in real life. And so, you know, if he wants a decent wedding gift, he better get writing. But this is great. So the 6 story series, I think I've spoken about them briefly before. Matt was the first writer, I think, to write a crime novel using the structure of a true crime podcast. So 6 stories, the name of this series, is a podcast series. So it's a really interesting setup. So every single book is looking at a cold case, an old crime, and Scott King, who is the presenter of 6 stories, is sort of he's not a detective, and he's not looking to solve things, but he is looking to understand. So each episode of the series, there's 6 episodes, and they all feature a different person who is tangentially related to the crime that took place. And I think it's just a really, really interesting structure to tell the story in that way, because I love a multi-perspective anyway. But I think because we're getting Scott's interpretation, not Scott's interpretation, what do I mean? Because it's not like a straight up multi-perspective in that we're inside the head of each of these different 6 characters. Sometimes like Scott will be asking them questions, and as a reader, I'm like, don't ask that, ask this. So you're not quite getting the full picture from every character that's involved, because you're only getting what Scott gets out of each of those characters, if you get what I mean. I'm not sure I'm doing a very good job of explaining it, but they're really great crime thrillers. They always have a sort of supernatural bent to them. This one specifically, and I think, is this my favourite one? I think I'm tied. My other ones are up there, if you're wondering why I'm staring at the ceiling. The rest of them are just on the shelf, just up there. So I think it's one of my favourites, but it is definitely heavier in content. It's got heavier subject matter. This is about child killers. So the cold case that they're looking at is a case where 2 12-year-old boys killed another 12-year-old boy. And that is obviously difficult, but I think Matt deals with it really, really well. And there's a lot of really interesting discussion. So the point that the podcast picks up at is basically we know that they have served their time now, the boys, now men, and they've been, as is often the case with child killers, they've been given new identities, and so the podcast episodes are interspersed with media articles, which is something that happens in every book as well, I think, or some kind of other media form, and there's a lot of discussion around whether that is right or okay, that these boys did this horrific thing and now they get a whole new life, or, you know, and I think Matt deals with the complexity and the nuance of the arguments surrounding that really, really well. So recommend these, and I hope I can strong arm him into doing some more of them, because, you know, nothing wrong with having a 7th, 6th story. Then next up, excuse me, I'm having a little wiggle and I'm going to have a swig of coffee. Yes, so next up is Stoneblind by Natalie Haynes, which I loved. Natalie Haynes is a real firm favourite of mine as well. I think I've read everything she's written bar one. I still haven't read The Children of Jocasta, but this is great. So this is Greek myth retelling, Medusa's story, and it is, I think I've mentioned it before in, was it my first video? I think it was my first video where I talk a bit about it. But it is Medusa's story, but it is also a lot more than Medusa's story. So Natalie Haynes is a classicist and incredibly knowledgeable about this sort of area of mythology. And so she sort of builds the web around Medusa's story really, really well. So all of these characters who I really like Greek myth, but because I am Hannah lost the plot and have a terrible memory, like I can't always remember how they all connect to each other, and she did a beautiful job of kind of drawing those connections. The thing I really struggle with myth retellings, and I don't think there's a way around this. In fact, I know there isn't a way around this. I was struggling towards the end of this book, and I thought it was that I was struggling with the pacing of it, but I don't actually think it was that. I think I was struggling with the inevitability of it, because we know that Medusa gets her head cut off. And because this is told from, not exclusively from Medusa's perspective, but definitely Medusa is a sympathetic character in it, you just desperately don't want it to happen. And you just, I think, yeah, so I think as my enjoyment of it was waning, I think it was just that it was inevitable, that you knew this was going to happen and that everyone was going to laud this bloody idiot man. And he is a bit of an idiot in this. What's his face? What is his face? Perseus. I wanted to say Theseus, and I was like, it's not him, it's the other one. Another numpty. Yeah, Perseus is a bit of a... He's just a bit of a simple lad, if I'm honest. And I think the imagination in here, though, because it's not just a cut and dry retelling, there are parts of this that are told from the perspective of the snakes on Medusa's head. And I loved that. I think Natalie Haynes has a really wry wit that comes through really, really well here. I think it can be quite acerbic at times, but generally it's I've just bloody loved it, and I'm also like obsessed with, I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful publication, this one. But yeah, loved it, and not surprised I loved it. I do think I preferred 1,000 Ships, but I also read 1,000 Ships in one sitting, and it was my first ever Natalie Haynes book that I read, so I think I can't decide, but I loved it. Next up, we're nearly there. God, we're getting through them, but oh, hang on. I should have put a cushion on the floor. My tripod only goes this high, in case you're wondering why I'm not sitting in a chair. I have to sit on the floor because of the limitations of my incredibly, unprofessional setup. So, the next book I read was another on audio, which was Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This was recommended to me by my friend Pippa when I said I wanted something autumnal and lovely. And I did not know that Howl's Moving Castle was a book. I am familiar, as I'm sure lots of people are, with the Studio Ghibli film of Howl's Moving Castle. which I really liked. And I didn't know that it was a book, and I didn't know that it was Welsh, which I think I have also said in another video, maybe in the Ali Smith blog. I mentioned starting to listen to it, but loved this. I think I don't think it is a requirement that all middle grade fiction or YA fiction has to be written in a way that is enjoyable for adults. But this really is a middle grade that I just properly enjoyed as an adult. I thought the narration, again, I did not write the narrator's name down, but I will insert it here. I thought the narrator was brilliant. Howl's Moving Castle is basically a sort of, it's a fantasy, but it deals a lot with fairy tale tropes, and it follows Sophie, who is the eldest of three sisters. And because she's the eldest of three sisters, she is sort of resigned to having this incredibly boring life where nothing happens to her, because in the fairy tales, it's never the older sibling that has an adventure. And she's got two younger siblings, and basically she ends up getting cursed and is sort of trapped presenting as an old woman. And it was really interesting hearing this sort of like young voice take on the sort of characteristics of a much older character. And she ends up befriending Howl, who is a magician in the area who has a very bad reputation, which he has largely cultivated himself to avoid doing work, which, to be honest, is a vibe that I am here for. And yeah, it's just lovely adventure. It is witty, it is wry. There is a fire demon in it who lives in the grate, who I am obsessed with, like that little character. I think he's great. I didn't love the ending. I really didn't love the ending. And, well, I could see the ending coming, and I was hoping, because she does a lot of things in here to subvert fairy tale tropes, and I was really hoping that the ending was also going to subvert a fairy tale trope, and it didn't. But that being said, I'm definitely going to continue with the series, especially over Christmas. I think it's going to be a great little audiobook experience, and I'm pretty sure they're all on Scribd, so yay! So that was lovely. And then the last fiction book that I'm going to talk about is this one, She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This is a book that I read for my in real life book club that I'm in, which is a queer book club, and I didn't love this. It is it's got lots of things in that I should have really liked. So it is set in the 1340s in China, and we're following a character called Ju. I'm going with Ju as a pronunciation. I did Google to check, and I could not get any consensus on it, and so sorry if it's wrong. But so Ju had a brother, and when they were very small, their parents took them to get their fortunes read, and the brother was given this glowing, incredible destiny where he's going to be the greatest thing since sliced bloody bread. And when Chu gets hers, the woman telling her fortune basically just says, nothing. There's nothing there. And, you know, gender stereotypes in ancient China being what they were, this doesn't surprise anybody. But then there is a famine, because this is a period of China where there is they're under the Mongol rule, and her brother and her father die during a famine, and so Ju takes on the identity of her brother, and then spends the rest of the novel sort of trying to get this great destiny to happen to her instead of her brother. And I can't quite put my finger on what I didn't like about it, but I think I just didn't really get on with the writing style, because I think it is plotted well. There is a big time jump in it that was a bit too big for me, and I would have liked a little bit more, some more stepping stones between some of the big jumps in it. But yeah, it just didn't quite do it for me. I think I didn't really like the main character much, and when you've got a character whose MO is achieving greatness, and you don't really like who they are as a person, I just found that I couldn't really get behind them. But what I will say is that I was massively, and this is a big book club, right? There's a lot of people in it, and I was massively an outlier. Most people really liked and enjoyed this. I actually think I would really like an adaptation of this. I think there was just something about Shelley Parker Chan's writing style that just like wasn't doing it for me, and that's okay, because you know, no book is for everyone, and I know for a fact that lots of people loved this book, but it's the first in a series, and it's not a series I will be carrying on with. I found it I just wasn't very gripped, let's put it that way. So I do recommend, if that sounds like your sort of thing, but like it just wasn't doing it for me, which is a real shame, but never mind. I will pass it on to someone who might enjoy it more. And now back to non-fiction. So another audiobook I listened to was The Stubborn Light of Things by Melissa Harrison, and this I loved. This is non-fiction, it's nature writing, and I have recently been loving a bit of nature writing. I think since I read Spring Cannot Be Cancelled by David Hockney, well, not by Martin Gayford and David Hockney, which basically is, if you haven't read it, it's a collection of interviews with David Hockney, and David Hockney is obsessed with nature and observing it and really seeing it and appreciating the sort of transience of it, and that really reminded me of this book by Melissa Harrison. I think her writing is really beautiful. I think sometimes with nature writing, there is like an assumed level of knowledge that the reader has. Because brain like a sieve, if people use a lot of technical language in nature writing, I'm like, I don't know what that flower is. I don't know what that bird is. Could you please describe it for me? And Melissa does it. She does. She like, for me, I really like her as a sort of no expertise required nature appreciator. I think that's a good word for it. So like, it's a good book to read if you appreciate nature but don't necessarily know a lot about it. If you do know a lot about it, I'm sure you would still love the book, but I didn't feel alienated from it because I don't have that much knowledge. And it was just lovely. I am really looking forward to getting to. Melissa Harrison also writes novels, which apparently also feature this beautiful sort of nature writing that she's so good at. So I think I am going to pick up one of those soon. I think I saw that All Among the Barley, I think it's called, I'll insert, is available on Scribd as well, so I might give that a listen. Last audiobook is Sitting Pretty by Rebekah Taussig. This is it's a memoir format that I really like, which is sort of essay collection as memoir. I really like it as a style, as a way of exploring memoir rather than just a straightforward sort of autobiographical, I was born on this day. Not that anyone writes like that, but you know what I mean. But yes, so Rebekah Taussig is a disabled activist. She is the person behind @sittingpretty on Instagram, and she basically tells, it's a series of essays about her experience of life as a disabled woman, and it is funny and wry. I think Rebekah writes with a lot of frankness, and she doesn't pull any punches, but I also think she's a really generous writer. And she really is earnestly not earnestly like earnestly, but just is authentically trying to communicate her lived experience in a way that isn't preachy or, oh, woe is me. It's just very very human, and yeah, I thought it was great. The audiobook is narrated by Rebekah herself, and she does a really brilliant job. And if you think you might be interested, I would really recommend checking out her Instagram, because she does post a lot of kind of mini essays and mini memoirs and stuff on there, so you could get a good idea of her writing style and the sort of content she writes before you pick up the book. That might be good. And so I was going to say last but not least, but actually it is last and least. I read Chatter by Ethan Kross. Now, this is not a book that I would ordinarily buy or read. I work in a sector where a lot of leadership theory, leadership thinking books circulate, and I've just collected from various conferences and things a fair collection. And this one I thought was going to actually maybe be worth taking a punt on. So it is Chatter, The Voice in Our Head and How to Harness It. But I thought this would have made a bloody great TED Talk. Not to be dismissive about the life's work of Ethan Kross, who is a neuroscientist, but I just found this book it seemed to me like this was written, as it probably was, as another leadership thinking book that is going to be speed read by some CEO who is then going to come in and do redo something in their company by it. It felt, it sort of was both dragged out for me and too shallow, because some of the neuroscience, so he sort of uses examples from sport where people have just got inside their heads, and how the voice in your head, when you start overthinking and you get this internal chatter, can completely derail your ability to do things that you are more than capable of doing, which is like a vibe, and I feel it, and I definitely have that. And there was some bits of this where the neuroscience behind why your brain does that was really interesting, but then it just, the sorts of the solution side of it, like the half of the book that's supposed to be about how to harness it just it felt like common sense. Half of it was like, talk to a friend. Like, I will. So yeah, but I'm recognizing that I am not the target audience for this book, so, you know, maybe I am. I think it could have been really really interesting, but it felt a bit insubstantial. Don't come for me, Ethan Kross. I don't want to send him on a internal chatter spiral, but there we go. So that was every book that I have read this month. So yeah, I would love to know what you've read this month, what your favourite thing that you have read is, if you've got any recommendations or if you've had any disappointments. In fact, I don't like dwelling on books that we don't like, she says, having just ranted about Chatter, but if there are books that you do recommend, I would love to know. And if you've enjoyed this video, if you've got this far, please do like and subscribe, because I'm just a baby on this old platform, and it would be lovely to have you stick around for more stuff, but no pressure if not. And I will will see you soon for something else. Bye.